talent and native Arkansas. I came to Washington in 1992 to work for then Blanche Lambert, who's a member of the House. I used to serve on the Merchant Marine Committee, which met in this room. And then went on to work for Marion Barry, who's still in, and then the last 6 years served on the staff of the House Energy and Commerce Committee with under Chairman John Dingell. And so had the pleasure of working for Wal-Mart for the last few months. It's been nice to go back home to a home state corporation, but one that's also very active in the issues that I've been working on for the last 6 years. So what I hope to do is kind of tell you a little bit about how this journey started for Wal-Mart, what we've set out to do, what we've accomplished, and kind of what we hope to accomplish going ahead. And if we could go to the next slide, please. Dave's not kidding when he talked about Rob's commitment to this in the beginning, and Lee Scott, who's our former CEO, really kicked it off formally. And Lee was motivated by a host of factors, but it was primarily he'd been doing some conversations with a lot of people around the country about some of the criticisms that people had of the company, part of which was our environmental footprint, if you will. At the same time, Hurricane Katrina came along, and Wal-Mart was very active in forward positioning goods and water and stuff like that. And we really saw what could happen if the company was focused on a single goal. And that was kind of a catalyst to say, what if we could use this power, the large size of the company, which has always been a point of criticism, and try to do good with it. And let's do it at the same time. We're still in business to make money, and we're trying to grow our stores and keep prices low for consumers, but let's make this commitment. And when Lee announced our sustainability goals, it was very much an issue, I think, he'd be the first one to say it, of not knowing exactly what we were getting into, making some commitments, not knowing how we're going to get there, but just saying, we're going to point in this direction, let's see where we go. It's funny, the phrase that often comes up in Walmart for these things is ready, shoot, aim. And I've seen that in practice more times than I would care to admit, but it's been interesting. Let's go to the next slide. Our new CEO, Mike Duke, who came in January, is now running the corporation, committed to broaden and accelerate the sustainability initiatives. Broaden meaning that we're applying it to all of our operations around the world, and I'll kind of show you the breadth of that in a minute. And accelerate in that we've taken a more urgent look at some of the goals that we have and really trying to speed them up. Let's go to the next slide. So simply put, the three goals, Walmart's three sustainability goals, are to be supplied by 100% renewable energy, to create zero waste, and to sell products that sustain our resources and the environment. Obviously, these are aspirational. In some cases, they're very, very difficult to even understand how we're going to get there. In some cases, are easier, and it's surprising what we've learned along the way. But we think it's important to lay out three broad-based, far-reaching goals that we can shoot at, and then give ourselves some targets under that to try and measure performance. Let's go to the next slide. One of the other things that we think about when we think about our sustainability agenda is not just Walmart itself, the corporation. We think about kind of four pillars. So there's Walmart, there's the supply chain of all the people that supply us with the goods that we sell. There are the associates that work in the stores, and then their customers themselves. And to give you a scope of that, let's go to the next slide here. How many of you have ever been in a Walmart? This is usually a pretty interesting question. For most of you are familiar with the store experience when you go in, but what you may not know is how big the company is worldwide. We've got almost 8,000 retail units in 15 countries, in China, Japan, India, South America, Central America, and obviously the North American continent. We have about 100,000 suppliers and 2 million associates, so that's a pretty far reach. And when you think about what you can do, if you focus all those resources on a goal, it can be pretty impressive. Let's go to the next slide. So when I talked about the three overarching sustainability goals, and then I mentioned that we have to kind of subdivide those into things that we think are easier to achieve, you can see an example of those under the three big heads. For instance, be supplied by 100% renewable energy. One of the things that we've committed to do is double the fleet efficiency of our trucking fleet. Walmart owns one of the largest private trucking fleets in the country. We've got about 8,000 drivers, 7,000 tractors, 53,000 trailers. It's a pretty big operation. The original goal was to improve the fleet efficiency by 25% by 2009. We beat it. We got 38% ahead of schedule, and so now we're focused on the next one. And then you can go down the list. I won't waste your time by reading all of them. But you can see these are things that each part of the business is accountable for and tries to measure against as they work towards that overall goal. Let's go to the next slide. And this is going to show you exactly how we organize sustainability into the business. Here we go. So we've set up what we call sustainable value networks. And as opposed to taking a model where we have 5 or 6 people who work on sustainability and kind of dictate initiatives out to the rest of the company. All of the sustainability stuff is really baked into the business units at Walmart. So the people who are in charge of the fleet are the ones who are in charge of the goal. The people who buy consumer electronics are the ones who are in charge from time to time. Consumer electronics are 20% more efficient than what we have on the shelves today, etc. So this is really a part of the metric that each one of the businesses is judged by. It's just another thing that they have to do. And it's interesting that the sustainability staff at Walmart in Bentonville is about 6 people. The rest of it is all the business, which is what we think the way it should be. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to give you guys some examples of some of the things that the networks are doing. First in energy and then in products. And we'll go to energy first. Next slide. So the greenhouse gas network is the one that's focused on energy efficiency. And when we think about efficiency of our stores, we're thinking about the materials that go into the building of the stores, the performance of the stores in terms of refrigeration, lighting, etc. And we've got an engineering team down there who are absolutely phenomenal in terms of thinking about every single thing that goes into the stores. It's been interesting to listen to these guys and learn from them, because really they treat the store concept as a lab. We actually have 2 stores that we call experimental stores, one in Aurora, Colorado, and the other in McKinney, Texas, where we try out different technologies. We see what works and what may be commercially deployable. We work with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, feed them back the results, and it's really a collaboration. And in fact, we also work with our competitors. Walmart is part of the Retail Energy Alliance that the DOE has, where we share all this information with other big box stores so that we can all kind of develop best practices. The store footprint is one area. The other area that's mentioned there on that slide is renewable energy. Obviously, trying to get to a goal to be supplied by 100% renewable energy is a pretty tough one to tackle. But we've taken some good whacks at it. We've got solar facilities up in California and in Hawaii. Recently doubled our commitment to solar in California. And we also have a wind deal in Texas that's going to supply 15% of the energy for about 360 stores, I think, in the Texas market. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, and one other thing I should mention, this is another area, because when you talk about those 4 pillars that I mentioned, you've got the company, obviously, the initiatives I talked about there with our own buildings is an issue, but we also have a program where we work with our suppliers to help them increase their efficiency. So we'll send an audit team out to one of our suppliers who requested. We'll take a look at their manufacturing operation, or their buildings footprint, whatever they want us to do, give them an audit and show them where they can save money and energy. And then, should they choose to take our recommendations, help use our buying power to bring down the cost of what they do. It's been a phenomenal program, and some of our suppliers have realized efficiency gains of up to 45%. And this is a lot of the stuff you'll see that I talk about today. None of it's really rocket science. It's just kind of taking a look at the way you do business, asking common sense questions, and then figuring out, well, why can't we do it in a different manner? And so things are, we talk about the low-hanging fruit all the time in terms of energy and environmental debate. A lot of this is low-hanging fruit. We just didn't bother to see it before we were focused on these goals. Let's go to the next thing we're talking about, buildings. The energy management system is an interesting concept that we have. All of the stores in the United States are visible from Bentonville, from a central control system that looks at the lighting, the refrigeration, the air conditioning, etc. Every single store. So if the classic example is if there's an ice cream cooler in Oakland, California that's open for 15 minutes, a buzzer's going to go off in Bentonville. Someone's going to pick up the phone and call the sales manager and say, hey, what's going on? That is how serious they are about keeping costs low on energy. Walmart is commonly referred to as the second largest purchaser of electricity behind the federal government. When you're looking at that kind of a bill, I'm not going to get into the numbers here, but it's a big one. You do things like this to make sure that every cent literally matters in terms of the bottom line. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about the logistics network. For us, logistics and transportation are 2 separate things, but very, very obviously linked together. We have a logistics network that manages mainly our incoming traffic in terms of imports from overseas, transportation of the guys who are responsible for getting it out of ports, taking it to the distribution centers, and then to the stores around the country. Doubling fleet efficiency is something I mentioned by 2015. It's interesting to see the steps that we've taken there, because it sounds like a pretty interesting goal. This goes back to common sense solutions. We literally looked at everything from the inflation of the tires on the trucks. We put auxiliary power units on our trucks so that they don't use fuel when they're idling. We looked at the routing system for all the trucks. We looked at the way that we pack them and cube them out, see if there's a more efficient way to do that. Literally looking at little things like that that made a big difference and allowed us to get that 38% increase that I mentioned earlier. Next slide, very briefly, alternative fuels is also a part of what we do. We have several hundred retail outlets in the United States, mainly in Sam's Club, that sell gasoline. We're blending ethanol into a lot of gasoline we sell, just like a lot of other people are these days. And then let's go to the next section, which we talk about some of the products that we sell and the way that we've worked sustainability both into the things that you may see in the store and to some of the things that you don't see in terms of the back end. Let's go to the next slide. Food, agriculture, and seafood, obviously an important issue to this group. Something that, again, I learn new things about Wal-Mart every day. It usually comes in with the largest block in every category. So we're the largest grocer in the country, and that means we sell a lot of agriculture and seafood. We've worked with the Marine Sustainability Council to make sure that everything we sell is going to be certified by DACERT and also the Aquaculture Certification Council. That's a long, intensive process. We're learning a lot about where our food and seafood is sourced from, and we're continually tweaking those programs as we move forward. The same for the next slide, which is going to be the wood and paper network. Well, the goal there is to increase the transparency of our wood product supply chain, working with our suppliers, trying to get a better handle on where the wood comes from, making sure that it's sustainably harvested. We have a partnership with the World Wildlife Fund's Global Forest and Trade Network that helps us on that initiative. And again, this has all been a learning experience. I think what you see in every one of the networks that I talk about is that we've partnered with NGOs and other people who've done expert work in these fields, tried to learn from them, and then we set off on this journey. And we try a lot of things that don't work, and we keep the things that do, obviously. Let's go to the next slide, jewelry. This is a pretty interesting concept. Walmart is also the largest seller of jewelry in town. And one of the things about sourcing of jewelry, you've all heard of conflict diamonds, and that's received a lot of attention, but people don't think as much about the resource-intensive practice of mining gold, platinum, silver, and other things that go into the jewelry. Has been a very opaque business because these things are sourced, aggregated together, then sold out in lots. People disaggregate them, make jewelry, and it's very hard to get some transparency there. We've formed our own private label jewelry line called Love Earth, which we think is the first completely traceable line of jewelry in the country. I think the only other one that has something like this is Tiffany. And that allows a consumer who purchases a Love Earth jewelry to go online and see exactly where every part of that piece of jewelry came from. It's a pretty interesting experience. And then let's go to the next one. This is another example of what we call customer-facing issues, things that people see in the stores. CFLs. We had a pledge to sell 100 million CFLs by the end of 2007. This was something we announced in 2006. Well before, I should note, the 2007 energy bill passed that really phased out incandescents. This is a goal we set for ourselves. We met it 2 months ahead of time. We sold 100 million, and to date we've sold 260 million CFLs, saving consumers about $7 billion in electricity costs. This is interesting to me personally because it was something where we also did some in-store education. We put up displays. We showed consumers here's what it's going to cost. It's going to be a little more than incandescent, which you can still buy here, but here's what you're going to save over time. Here's the life of the bulb, et cetera. And obviously it was a big success. And the price, the more that we bought, the more we sold, the more we bought, the lower the price went. So it helped out everybody, including the manufacturers of CFLs. One more example of, next slide, of something that we've done. This is in an area where you don't really see the difference as a consumer other than the size, but we took a pledge of the Clinton Global Initiative to sell only concentrated liquid laundry detergent in all of our stores. I think it cost them our suppliers off. So we worked with them to do that, and I think Unilever was the first one. They're the manufacturer of all Small and Mighty, and then the rest of them, Procter & Gamble, came along, and now that's all we sell in stores. But from a consumer experience, nothing changes. You still wash your clothes, it comes out the same way. You can use hot or cold water, etc. From our experience, and interestingly enough, from the supplier's experience, we both saved a lot of money. Millions of pounds of plastic resin not used to produce larger bottles, millions of pounds of water not used. We can pack more stuff onto a truck when we ship it, lower fuel costs. So everybody's happy. That's a win-win. At the end of the day, the customer still has the same experience for the same price, which is obviously very important to us. I'm going to skip over the next slide because I want to give you guys, the next two actually, I want to give you guys some time to get to questions. Sourcing is something that David mentioned in his comments and something we take very seriously. In 2008, in October, I believe, we had a summit. Let's go to the next slide. In China, where we had a sustainability summit, we had about 1,000 of our largest suppliers, NGOs, government officials came, and we talked about the transparency of our supply chain in China and also around the world. And we laid out some pretty specific commitments that we expected of people. We said that we're going to require all of our direct import, non-branded, and private label, that's the stuff that Walmart sells under the Walmart name, suppliers to declare their factories compliant with local social and environmental regulations by 2011. We said that we're going to require our suppliers to be more energy efficient, up to 20% by 2012. We said that we want to drive returns out of the system from goods produced in China down to less than 1% by 2012. And we also want to be able to see in a transparent way all of the sources that our suppliers in China deal with from the very beginning until the very end. And that's something that, all these things are things that we're going to audit and eventually roll out around the world. It was a very interesting initiative to me personally, and just looking at it from someone who's been involved with climate change work, and China is always the thing that's held out as the most difficult, one of the most difficult things to solve. This was something where the private sector, we came in as a business and just said, look, we need these changes. We expect them. If you want to do business with us, we'll help you. If you're falling behind to a certain extent, but after that, if you can't make it, we're going to go somewhere else. And it's working. And there's no government involvement there. That's just something that we've done on our own initiative. So to me, that's been pretty exciting to watch. Let's go to the next slide. And then that's about it. It's been I'll let you guys ask some questions, but it's been a really interesting story. It's hard to get a handle on in 4 months. You can see all those sustainable networks that we have. I was joking with John earlier that I've really only been able to spend a lot of time on transportation and energy, given all the work on climate right now. I've got clients, if you will, that I haven't had a chance to meet with. So with that, I'd love to take your questions and get your feedback. And if I can answer them, I will. If I can't, then I'll get it for you.